Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Up for Women, Speak Up to Lead Up. We are now on episode number 144, and I'm excited to have Miss Darci Lang with me today, and we're going to be talking all about reframing your relationships, one of my favorite conversations to have. But before we do, I want you to know that this episode is being sponsored by Julie Jones with the Adventures of Julie Jones and the Get Shit Done coaching platform. Are you an entrepreneur who would like to get more done, be more productive, and be more effective in communication without losing your sanity? Julie provides a one-to-one coaching workshops, speaking memberships, all customized for your specific needs. There's no cookie cutter approach when it comes to you living your best life. Are you ready to get serious about taking action with your life and business? Are you ready to move to the next level? Take action now and visit Julie's website at www.juliejones.biz to book a free 30-minute call with her. And of course, we will have all of that information listed below at your fingertips, or you can head on over to our Facebook page at Lead Up for Women, and you can find the information there in the description of today's video. And of course, you can always find everything Lead Up for Women on social media and our website at leadupforwomen.com. So let me tell you a little bit about Darci before we jump right in here, because I'm really excited about today's conversation. I feel like there's a lot of relationships out there we could reframe or look at it in a different perspective, especially in today's world and what's happening. So Darci's a motivational speaker. She's an award-winning entrepreneur, a best-selling author, a wife, and a mom whose simple tools helps individuals reframe the way they look at and think about their work and their interactions and relationships with others. Darci, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Colleen.
So Darci, something had to have happened in your life for you to feel the need to share experiences, for you to help others reframe relationships, for you to provide, create skills and tools for others to use. So take us back a little bit and help us understand, where was the pivotal point in your life that you realized that there was a demand for this?
Oh, that's such a great question. As I say in my book, most motivational speakers are not born in the back of a limousine, right? We all have a background and a story to tell. My story starts, I'll give you the quick story. 52 years ago, I live in Canada. In Saskatchewan is my province. And I was born in a small town 52 years ago called Bigger, Saskatchewan. And Colleen, it's a very optimistic town because 2,600 people live in Bigger, and the sign outside of town reads, New York is big, but this is bigger. So I always joke I was born into optimism, but my 16-year-old mom I got pregnant with me in 1968, and I was born in 1969 to young parents. And my father got full custody of me, which was a little unheard of in the early 70s. And I was raised by my dad from the age of 1 to 8. So I saw my mom, for a week at Christmas and a week at holidays, but I didn't really have a mom per se in those first few years. My parents have both been married 3 times. I have 10 half and stepbrothers and sisters. So I had a very colorful childhood with trauma and abuse and stress and crisis. And then when I was 18, I moved from my home to 2 provinces away and got a job at a tuxedo rental company. In my house, there was no means, no marks, no discussion of post-secondary. You just went and got work. So I went and got a job at a tuxedo rental company at 18 and ended up buying that store when I was 24 years old. I had, as I've listened to many of your podcasts, kind of a rock bottom at 24. And I had a crisis, and I got this book that gave me this idea that we all hold this big imaginary magnifying glass out in front of us in our lives, and we have a choice what we focus it on. And I remember sitting in my rock bottom thinking, hang on, what if I did that? And I started to wake up in the morning and say, okay, so what is good and what could I control? And then my bank manager, I bought this tuxedo store when I was 24 years old. My bank manager asked me a question that would change the course of my life. He said, you come into the bank and you seem so happy and you know everyone's name and we all know your childhood. So you're happy, but not delusional. So what is your secret? And I told him, I said, Ed, I believe I hold this magnifying glass out in front of me. And he said, what percentage of your life do you think is good? And I said, and you could control. And I said, about 90%. And Colleen, poof, 28 years later, here I am. So that's the short story.
I mean, to have that perspective at that young of an age, that's incredible. Because I would say at that age, we're still really trying to discover who we are. And some of us might have been married already with kids. And then, we're just trying to figure out how to be a mom. And, at least I was at that age, right? There's no way I have this many kids and grandkids if I wasn't having kids at 19 years old like I was.
Right.
So, yeah. So, I mean, that is just incredible to have that perspective at that age. And then you've built on that over time of teaching others. And I'm assuming that you were first the model to others by your actions of what you did before you started teaching others. Is that correct?
Correct. And it's helpful, Colleen, to have grown up in a colorful family with lots of challenge, because that is honestly a gift in the end, because it gives you skills, a skill set to work with later on. We weren't a family that swept problems under the carpet and tripped over them for the rest of our lives. We were the kind of family who went to counseling and treatment and did some really spectacular things. So I saw a lot of people in my life heal growing up, and I grew up very quickly, very quickly. But the thing that I've learned, Colleen, is that not everyone grew up with families or family who taught them how to be positive, to see their life through a lens of what is good. And when you grow up with trauma and abuse, you naturally see what isn't. So it's been training the brain and training, getting your mindset around, I think what helps, Colleen, is that I have street cred because I've been through so much and ended up opening 3 companies in 1 week at the age of 24. So I've been there, done that. So the relatability is there. And when people say, oh, must be nice, I say, no, there's nothing nice. There's nothing nice about positive, nothing nice about having success. It's work. And you have to be willing to wake up in the morning and train your brain to say, what do I need to do? Lead up, right? What do I need to do to change first the person in the mirror? Then I can affect my business, my team, my family, and the greater world. Only then.
Yeah. And what are some of those lessons starting at such a young age that you've learned along the way of shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? What are some of those lessons you learned that maybe you would have done things differently, or that you give advice to others now?
Yeah, one thing I've learned is the power, and I know, Colleen, you know this, but the power of our thoughts and our words. That there's such a power and an energy to that. So I learned very young not to complain about things I can't control. So I have a very strict 3 times complain rule. And the 3 times complain rule is kind of embedded in my DNA, because I think it's important to complain, talk about what isn't working, the things you can't control, because I know women who don't complain and grew up with at dinner tables where people swept things under the carpet, and they don't have a skill set for talking about how they feel. So I'm all about talking about how you feel, because if you don't, then you drink, drug, shop, gamble, numb your problems away. So talk about how you feel 3 times. It's cathartic and important. But then I have what I call a lay that sucker out meeting where I'm all about talking about how we feel, but past 3 times, I call it recreational whining. And now it's time to lay that sucker out, look in the mirror and say, okay, so this is my current reality. This is my health, my mental health, my marriage, my children, my business. What do I need to do to show up in a better and different way, to heal, to grow? And that's what you're doing, Colleen, with all these podcasts, teaching us all skills to grow.
Yeah, I love, I remember when someone told me, your life is your life because you created it. And if you don't like it, change it. And it sounds so harsh, but I love that you said, look at your relationships, look at your career, look at everything in your life that makes up your life. And this is what you've created, right? We are responsible, and we have the power to make the changes. It's not an outside force. It's we get to. make these changes in our lives. And if you're not happy with it, change it to something you are happy with, right? So talk to us about the 90%. I want to focus on the 90% because this is one of your books that you wrote. So talk to us about focusing on the 90% because you had given us some really good nuggets up to this point, and I want to continue with that.
Great. I sure will. So focus on the 90% again is the idea that we hold this magnifying glass out in front of us. We can choose to see the 90% positive, what's working, what we can control aspects of our life, or the not so positive 10%. So I encourage, but for some say, well, I have 10%. Like the reality is I'm dealing with addiction, depression, aging parents, teenagers, marriage problems, financial problems. People have huge, enormous lives, Colleen, and I'm not glossing over that people have true, real trauma and problem. Great. Fair, not great, fair. But I say then do this. Look in the mirror and ask the person in the mirror, what do you need? Like for you to have the absolute best life you want, what would you need? And then I'm not all about New Year's resolutions. I'm about New Year's themes. So then because look how fast a year goes, boy. So then pick in January, the one biggest wound, the biggest challenge in your life. And again, maybe it's your own mental health, maybe it's your marriage, your business, etc. And then for that entire 2022, for the entire year, listen to podcasts like you do, Colleen, seek mentors, get counseling, do something that helps to heal that, then pick up. And I truly believe, as you do, Colleen, that if you do not do the work on the person in the mirror first and all your insecurities and your 10%, then it's very difficult to see your job, your staff, your coworkers, your family, and the greater world through a lens of 90% if you can't even see yourself that way.
Yeah.
So that's the idea, is the control to wake up and say, okay, I know what isn't good in my life, what I can't control, but what is good today? And you know, Colleen, as a positive person, the more you train the brain to wake up and say, I'm alive, I have a home, I have food, I truly believe that changes. It changes you.
It does. Gratitude plays a huge part, and I think about my brother-in-law, who I'm going to say it's probably been 7 years. I could be wrong on that. Maybe 8 years ago now. It was around the holidays. It was between Christmas and New Year's. I just remember my husband and I coming home and settling down in our room. And my husband got a phone call and I was unzipping my boots, getting ready to like change my clothes. That's why I knew it was winter around the holidays.
Right.
Change my, because I had boots on, right? In Arizona, you only wear boots if it's like December. And I was getting ready to settle in and change into my pajamas. And I heard my husband say, what hospital was he taken to? And I zipped my boots back up, went downstairs, grabbed my jacket, and we found out his brother-in-law had been in a motorcycle accident. So he wound up being a paraplegic and has been in a wheelchair ever since. So the first, year of his life was in and out of hospitals, mainly in ICU for their whole first half of that year. The couple of years after that, the frame at which he was looking at the relationship of himself and his life in was very much of pity. Look what's happened to me, and he was very negative. And it took him probably a good 2 years or so, 3 years or so, to realize all of the wonderful things in his life that still existed. And I always think of him of a person who has changed his life around. He's back to working exactly in the same place he always was. He has the equipment that he needs to work. He now gets to ride his granddaughter around on his wheelchair, which is so fun for her, He has gotten vehicles that allow him to be independent and drive where he needs to go. He's so active in his children's lives, and it was a reframe, right? He could have taken what happened to him and let that ruin his life and had a perspective of that this was damaging, that he, was on the other end of things that were happening that were bad. However, once he got over that in the very beginning and kind of came to grips with it, which I always say, have your pity party, just don't send out invitations, right? So we all care for you. We all love you. We're all there to support you. But you don't want someone to actually celebrate the pity with you. That you want to be able to be around people that can help you realize where you're at, and make the changes in your life. So I was so proud of him that he reframed his relationship with himself And what was so wonderful still in his life, that he was alive, that, he
Right.
was, he could breathe, that he could still use his arms. There's so many positives that still, came out of that. And that's just one example that I wanted to share, of someone reframing. So I guess I would ask the question of the listeners: what's going on in your life today? Look at that 90%, and what are the things in your life that you cannot change, and how can we reframe relationships? I want to talk about reframing relationships with others. We talk a lot about reframing relationships with ourselves, but do you have a success story, even if it's one of your clients reframing relationship with themselves, or maybe someone in their lives? Do you have a success story of someone you can share with us, Darci? I love stories.
You bet. And
Yeah.
firstly, let me say about your brother-in-law that some of the happiest people that I meet in a year, Colleen, have been to hell and back.
Mhm.
Because, at the crisis trauma, that's a place where we get shined up, polished off, and we come out into the world a little shinier because we know what real stress is. And, the fact that we're alive and okay and had the means to overcome the things we did. So kudos to him, because there's some that are still sitting in the chair unhappy. And like, that's a
Yeah.
courageous story. And one of the things about reframing relationships with others, to answer your question, is, again, we've talked about it enough, once we see ourselves through a 90% lens, and I know you and I are very committed to self-care and taking care of our mental health and walking. I walk every day too, and all the things that we're doing. It's interesting, and maybe not so interesting to some, but as soon as I call it feed me first, as soon as I feed me mentally, physically, spiritually, psychologically, then I feed the four-legged and two-legged in my house, then I feed the world. And I believe fully that if we as women did that more, I think we're taught at dinner tables to serve the world first, scraps to the family and nothing left, then I can reframe the way I see the rest of the world from that place of fullness. And one thing that really helps me, and something I talk a lot about in my presentations, is first look after you, then carry that magnifying glass to work and show up a beacon of light in the place that you work. Seeing the things that are good, have more 90% meetings, celebrate more, be more grateful for the job, use words to explain your job, like grateful, blessed, and honored and privileged to serve. And to answer your question, the more that people do that, the more they realize how grateful they are to have this job, because we're a magnet in the world. And if you're complaining at work all the time, that changes you metaphysically. Then to reframe how you see your coworkers, when you see and your staff and your clients, when you see people through a 90% lens, that's the empathetic, compassionate understanding of what connects us as women, what unites us as women, not the 10% judgmental, prejudice, racist, labeling, gossiping, magnifying glass. Colleen, you and I are the same. We hang out with women who are positive driving forces in the world. Why would I hang out with women or see their other women through a 10% lens when there's so much good? And then a huge game changer for my clients is being able to have something left for the people that you love. It's one thing to go out into the world and be a motivational speaker, but I can't come home and nag my family, because you know what they say? I'm quite the motivational speaker. So the tool that my audiences love the most is what I call my doorknob theory. And the doorknob theory is, I put my hand on the door, Colleen, and these days it's in the other room, but I put my hand on the door. Normally I'm traveling, of course, like you, and I put my hand on the door, and I don't come in and tell them positive. And sometimes I'm outside for like 20 minutes, and we have cold winters in Saskatchewan, but I stand on the side and I think about my 90%, rather than thinking of the mess or the backpacks or the dishes in the sink. Because I don't know about your marriage, but if I come in guns blazing, I make everybody feel like they're not good enough. And I proudly profess going in the world and making sure people in the world know that they're good and you care about them and you support them. Why would I go home and act differently than I've just been on a stage all day?
Yeah.
So the ability to stop, think about who's entering that door, that has been a game changer for many of my clients.
That's huge. And even just walking in the other room, right? If you're just going from room to room in your house, because your children are in one room and you're, I always ask my husband for another perspective sometimes when sometimes I don't like it when I it's hard to explain it, but I feel like we have feelings that happen that trigger us right away, and we don't know how those happen, or they come quickly, they can go quickly. So it's like I don't know if I created that, because I never know when I have a specific feeling of something. And I've gone to my husband before and said, I don't want to feel this way about a specific person or a specific subject or about something that's happening. Why do I feel this way? And I would say, do you want to help me walk through this? Help me understand this. And I look for another perspective, because I think maybe it's an age thing, Darci. At the age I'm at now, I just really feel like there's so much more that maybe I'm not seeing. It's not a I'm right, you're wrong, and this is my opinion, your opinion, and my opinion's the right way and yours is the wrong way. I feel like we're in a world where we're starting to get more divided, and people like you, Darci, and I, we're trying to unite people as much as possible and give them tools to be able to have those conversations. And so when I'm not feeling particularly happy about my feeling, and I'm not satisfied with why I'm feeling that way, I definitely have a conversation out loud about it to try and get another perspective, because maybe I feel like it's a blind spot of something I'm not seeing. And I feel like we need to recognize what those blind spots are, because those are generally blocking us from something. Don't you think?
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Yes. And because they're teachers, like God, I know you and I are God people, but God, Buddha, universe, creator, spirit, you're sent these teachers. And if you have 10% people in your life that can still trigger you, that's a wound you have not healed.
Yeah.
So that's really important for me I'm like, I love people. And I love the human condition, and just like you, I love the story, and to be able to see people through that curious lens of, I wonder why, has transformed me as a leader. It really opens you up, not again, judging. You can judge something about your sister-in-law, the one thing you don't like about her, but there's 90% in there too. Have you ever even told her what a great mom she is? Or are you just so annoyed she's always late? So, but again, it's always a mirror back to us. I agree with you completely. What do I need to process here and unpack, so I'm not carrying this around every time I see that person? That's very introspective, Colleen. Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we just need to notice what that is, right? And take the time to understand it. But, you were talking about thoughts and feelings, and I feel that, depression and anxiety, a lot of those things are brought on based on our thoughts and feelings, and they become your reality. They are exactly your reality of what you believe. And that's a slippery road to go down in some instances. So I'm so thankful that you've created tools and written books, resources for so many people to access, how to reframe these relationships and perspectives that we may have. The doorknob theory is just excellent, right? The 90% and focusing on those items, that there are going to be things in our lives that I cannot control the red light, green light. So if I'm in a hurry because I decided to leave late, that was my choice, and I hit all the red lights, I can be as mad as I want at the engineers that created all of the the pathways that I'm driving, but it's going to do no good. And I remember driving to work, week after week, day after day, year after year, frustrated every day that I was going to be late. I'm going to be late. There's too much traffic. And then finally, the last few years, I just decided this is part of the path. It's always the same traffic. It's always the same stress. But if I just settle back in and have my tea and turn on the radio or listen to a book or something good, I can enjoy my ride and show up a lot less stressful because I've eased my way into the day by choice. Then I started writing these great quotes on my wall every day for people to see, and started trying, like you said, trying to bring more light, because every person that walked through the door would be like, oh my gosh, the traffic was so bad, and that's why I'm late. And the traffic, and it's like, I know the traffic sucks, but we can either let it affect us, or we can just enjoy the traffic to give us more time to be educated, to read a book on the way. And that's the way I looked at it, right? Just perspective. I wasn't always that way though.
Right. But those are the 10% in life that we have no control over. And what's interesting, Colleen, is a lot of people complain about 10% things in their job, in their marriage, in their whatever, that they knew. If you said yes to the job, you knew there'd be traffic. So why
Yeah.
are we complaining about the parts of our job? You know, when my motivational speaker friends are like, "Are you tired of the travel?" I'm like, "Oh my God, we knew." Why would you pick a job that you
Yeah.
knew that had these 10% and go complain about them? Because it's a habit. So
Yeah.
reframe it. Hey, you got to listen to podcasts. You got, there's good if
Yeah.
you look for it.
Yeah. Ladies, if he left the lid up before you married him, he's not going to put it down right when you marry him. I'm just going to say. I mean, I don't have that problem because that was one of the things I was like, oh, he puts the lid down. Okay, that's a good thing. That's just
No
going to be
kidding.
consistent, I guess, in our life. But you're right. I mean, we could spend all day finding the bad things in a situation, in a relationship. I love the reframing the perspective and looking at it from a positive way. Everything could go wrong in your day, right? Without your control or you being able to have changed the outcome on it, but it's how your perspective is of the day, right? You never meet those people, Darci. You're one of them, by the way, where no matter what's going on in their lives, they're always smiling, they're always happy, they always have something positive to say. And then you just found out, right? And I'm not saying this is you, but then you just found out like they just filed bankruptcy. One of their children is in the hospital, their other child's getting a divorce and moved in with them. And all these horrible things are going on. And their roof was leaking and they have to get a new roof. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, because they never would have let you know what was happening behind the scenes because they choose to just look at life from a different lens.
Absolutely. And I am all about the real too. I'm all about the authentic real that
Yeah.
life does have roofs. Life has problems. Look at your brother-in-law's life has
Yeah.
changed dramatically. And I'm not glossing over the fact that there isn't real that is
Yeah.
mucked in the middle of that smile. And I'm all about not smiling for 3 days till I figure out a new plan to smile again. So I'm all about the real, but it's so important to me that women, my favorite quote in the world is, be the change you want to see in the world. And I want women to learn to love themselves, even if no one taught them how.
Yeah.
Then I want them to go love their job, because what's the point? And then just go be love in the world. Just be loving and see people through a compassionate lens, and then go home and have something left.
Yeah.
Because everything in my life has changed now that I've grown physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Yeah.
Everyone around me, they're better, because it was me who had to change. I knew my husband was messy when I married him too. Well, not yours, because he puts the seat down, but I knew messy. That. Why would I constantly pick at the same thing when he's a spectacular man? I couldn't have a nicer husband. Do we tell them enough? Our partners, our husband, do we say I love you and have I thanked you? I must thank my husband 100 times a day, and then you get more things done, right?
Yeah.
But it's just this training. Where is my magnifying glass? Am I complaining? Why? Who taught me that was normal behavior? It's not normal to complain, and it repels everyone around you. It really
does. I call it poo-pooing on people.
Perfect.
So you got to get an umbrella, like a steel umbrella, and protect yourself when other people are poo-pooing on you and having a bad attitude, because that stuff is contagious. And if someone around you is complaining, if you don't block it, it's going to stick on you. So you want to get as far away from that as possible. And you are a makeup of the 5 people you hang out with the most. Absolutely 100%. You need to find people that fuel you, that are positive, that are in your circle, people that believe in you, that tell you the truth, that will help you reframe when you need to reframe, and will feel with you when you're having the feelings, right? And on the days that you're frowning. They understand, because we all have to you have to go through it. You don't go around it when something is happening in your life, right? You have to go through it. And and you talked about pouring into ourselves first. The airlines have it down 1,000% the right way when they tell you to put your mask on first, because every single female I've ever talked to wants to start putting masks on everybody else first, every single one of them. And that's why we eat last at the dinner table. If there's anything left, that's why my mom did, my grandma did, my great grandma did. Unless we change things moving forward, which we have the power to do, then we're just going to be doing things over and over again the exact same way they've always been done. And the definition of that is insanity, by the way. So let's make the changes that we need to make in our own lives, so that we can go out and impact others, which is what you do, Darci. So tell us a little bit more about how my community can find you, the best way for them to connect with you, how they can get their hands on your hot books. Tell us all about the tools and where we reach you.
Wonderful. Colleen, thank you for this opportunity. All my handles are Darci Lang, and I'm DARCI not Y. So Darci Lang are all the socials, and my website, darcilang.com. Again, DARCILANG. I have 3 books. I have 2 motivational books and a leadership book that I'm very proud of, that ties in perfectly with what you're doing. And right now, this winter, I'm writing a book for women and a book for entrepreneurs. So by next year, I'll have 5. And yeah, I'm just so incredibly blessed and grateful you would invite me here today, Colleen.
Oh, I want every single one of my listeners to jump out there and get in your community and get to know you. I met Darci at a Lead to Impact conference that we were at online not too long ago, and we had similar friends and acquaintances that were at that same conference, and that's how we met. And Darci's just so impressive. She's absolutely beautiful. She's real. I think the authenticity piece and being real and understanding that no matter what's going on in your lives, we have the power to work through those and change our lives to live the lives that we desire. And Darci, any last words for my listeners before we wrap up with this amazing interview today?
You could have wrapped that up better. Agreed. Again, we've all been through 10%. I have books full of 10%. I've lived with somebody with mental health my entire life. Every man I've ever lived with has had mental health. I understand life is difficult, but what are we waiting for? Let's not waste one more day to just say, okay, it is what it is. But what do I need to do to say, how can I do to make this a better situation?
Yeah. So take the power that you have already into your own hands and create the life that you desire, the relationships that you desire, be the person that you desire to be. So thank you, Darci, for sharing that with us today. And ladies, I just wanted to leave you with this. Remember, you're the only you that's ever been. You're the only you that is ever going to be. That's it. There is no one else like you. You have a fingerprint for a reason because you're unique. So be your best impression, your first best impression, be your golden sauce and stand out. This is about you and how you pioneer your future, because there's never going to be another you. So this is it. You do not need my permission. Nobody is coming. You give yourself permission to live the life that you desire. And until next week, ladies, be you and be strong. And we'll see you then. Take care now.